Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast Offseason Preview Series, where Bryce Simon and I dig in to all of the big decisions every NBA team needs to make this summer. We have recorded this one previously, but unfortunately it got lost to the ether when the Knicks decided to blow up their coaching staff and fire Tom Thibodeau. So this is number 2 on the New York Knicks. The first one will not be getting released, but this one will be. Before we dive into everything happening with the Knicks, who, as of this recording, still don't have a coach, thank you all for listening to this series. This is number 28 that we have done. We only have the 2 teams still in the finals remaining. Those will come out together on Tuesday. Actually, you will get a double dip on Tuesday, I believe is the plan for those. But thank you all for listening and making this such a successful series. We've had a blast. We've had such a fun time doing these. Go hit the subscribe button. If you've enjoyed these, go hit the like button on whatever podcasting platform you use. Hit the 5-star button. We're closing in, I think, on like 48,000 YouTube subscribers, 49, somewhere in that ballpark. We would love to get to 50 by NBA draft night. If we can get to 50 by NBA draft night, that'd be great.
You
thank
called
you all
it,
for making
Sam.
this.
I wanted by like the start of next regular season, and you're like, no, Bryce, I think we can get there by draft night. And I'm like, man, if we have 50K going to the lives, that's going to be pretty sweet.
Let's get there. Let's get to 50K. Hit that subscribe button. We appreciate it immensely. Okay, Bryce, the New York Knicks, a very exciting season, just straight up. So before we dive into all of the madness that is kind of occurring, it feels like, with the coaching search and why I think that some of it's been blown out of proportion. I think it's just worth noting how exciting this season had to be for Knicks fans and how exciting the season was for Knicks fans. We know firsthand. Our fearless producer, GMAC, Andrew Claudio, tells us every day how exciting it was for Knicks fans up until the Eastern Conference Finals. So any conversation here, I just think, has to start with that piece of it. They go out and they get Karl Towns. They go out and they trade all of their draft capital for Mikal Bridges, obviously. I'm just really fascinated now to see where this team goes, because I think that this was a real positive step in the right direction this year.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at just like the Knicks season by season going back to 13, 14. And Knicks fans are going to know this, so I don't need to rattle it off. They understand that. But I mean, it wasn't super pretty for 6, 7, 8 years there. And then they finally got it together in Thibodeau's first season. And then over the last 3, 47 wins, 50 wins, 51 wins, Eastern Conference semis, Eastern Conference semis, Eastern Conference finals. And at time of recording, we don't know the results of the NBA finals, but you potentially lost to the NBA champions in that Eastern Conference finals. And I'm not going to get off on my Pacers don't get enough credit tangent, but it's like you may have lost to the one of 2 teams that could beat you in the NBA. And I think that's why on the episode that will never be, we kind of talked about do you have to blow it up? Do you have to make wholesale changes? And I think it's still worth noting, you brought it up first, and I agree with it, Sam. You got Karl-Anthony Towns in the fall, right? Whenever you made that move. And so you didn't even have a full offseason to put things together. And I want to quickly say, I've always said with the Thibodeau stuff, didn't always agree with the process, so I understand, but the results do matter. And he was getting a lot of positive results in terms of where he was getting this team. And so I saw both sides of things. I'm sure we'll talk about the coaching search to some extent, but yes, I think this is still a team that's a real interesting place with a real talented top end of their roster.
And I think that that's where this has to start, right? So this is a team that has Jalen Brunson, OG Anunoby, Karl Towns, Mikal Bridges, potentially, as it's real expensive dudes, right? And the reason that we have to throw Mikal into the expensive bucket is because, to me, the number one decision that has to get made before anything else this summer is Mikal Bridges is up for a 4-year, $156 million contract extension. It's a big number. I don't think it's a number that other teams wouldn't pay necessarily. I do think somebody else, like if he was to hit free agency next summer where a lot of teams have cap space, I think somebody else would pay him like close to $40 million a year. But the question for the Knicks is, given the new collective bargaining agreement, given how punitive the aprons are now, given that James Dolan, I think we'll spend on a really high level roster, but might get like, itchy feet if it turns south pretty quickly. Is Mikal Bridges the right person to give a 4-year, $156 million extension to for this team? And I think you can go either way, honestly. Like I would assume he's going to stay, to be honest. The fact that they fired Tom Thibodeau, there were obviously those murmurings throughout the year. Mikal Bridges obviously said at one point, talked about like having to play so many minutes very publicly in a way that I don't know that we've seen him do before, in all honesty. I am intrigued to see how they handle his extension situation. Is it the full 4 for 156? Is it that he takes a little bit less? Is it that he takes 3 years? Like, is there any wiggle room there? When I kind of bring all of this up, what is your immediate reaction? Because mine is like, I wouldn't mind exploring the trade market, in all honesty, on Mikal Bridges if I was the Knicks. I understand that it's going to be really hard from a public relations perspective to be like, we just traded 5 first-round picks and a swap for Mikal Bridges. We're now going to turn around and trade him for a price tag that would be less than that, frankly. But I don't know if you can look at that and that be the key factor in the decision-making process, I guess.
Yeah. So my initial thought is in a vacuum, I wouldn't want to pay Mikal Bridges that number based on what I have seen the last couple of years, what we've talked about with his defense, even though there were times in the playoffs where I thought it was better than what I felt like it was during the season. The second thing I think of, Sam, is in a world of aprons and taxes, and all of these conversations, the new CBA, the conversation is around how many guys can you pay at this level? And the Knicks would almost be going entirely against that. Now, the fact that Brunson took the deal he did is what opens all of this up, right? Like we always have to continue to say that he makes this even possible. The fact that next year he'll only be making $35 million as their best player and an all NBA player. But Bridges we both would agree he's their 4th best player, right? Like we both think OG Anunoby is better than him.
I do. Yeah,
okay. I do agree as well, especially when you factor in, I think there's a little bit of a gap defensively between those two guys. At least this last season, I felt that way.
Agree.
You're going to pay your 4th best player $40 million while you're also paying, as much as I like this player, Josh Hart as your 5th best player or up 20. Like where are you winning on the margins? Like where are you making that up other than Brunson? Because you're paying Cat top of the market money. You're paying OG $40 million. Like I just wonder if you can really construct this roster. I wonder if you can build out the depth, Sam, is what I'm asking. And I'm assuming you're going to hire a coach that's going to use a little bit more depth than Thibodeau. And so you would want to do that. I don't know. Maybe they won't. But I think that is a flaw for this team, is the depth and the versatility and the options they have with the roster, because it is so top heavy with talent. And if you sign him to this extension, with money as well.
So they would be getting some back on Deuce, obviously, because Deuce's deal is quite cheap, which is good. But I mean, this is a team, just to kind of sort through their financial picture a little bit, that has $196 million already guaranteed for 10 players. They're about $1 million over the projected first apron and about $11 million away from the second apron. They're into the tax already. I would expect that, if Bridges stays, they're definitely in the tax, but it gives them a little bit of wiggle room to be able to potentially use the taxpayer mid-level. But if you do that, you're talking about all minimums. Like you're talking about taxpayer mid-level and all minimums, right? You're probably using number 50 and like getting somebody in a roster spot. That's probably not a player that helps you, right? I always thought that Dadier was a real project. Like that's why that pick didn't make a ton of sense to me at the time. I understand the theoretical upside with Dadier, but I just didn't see a guy that was going to be all that ready to play like early in his career. Hook Porty, maybe he can be your third center, but like center isn't really the issue from a roster perspective right now, I would argue. I think Kolek has a real chance to be able to play. That's one guy that might be able to help you, but I think that you're talking, if you do decide to do this with Bridges, mostly about Deuce, and then Deuce probably gets pushed out at some point whenever he's up for a big deal and hits unrestricted free agency. Mitchell Robinson probably like is a real trade candidate at this point as well, in order to try and fill out the depth in any way, shape, or form that you can.
What about Josh Hart? Like, what would his trade value be around the, like, could you split him into two rotation players where that makes sense to you?
I'm just laughing at the way you said trade value. Like you were going, do you know who Christopher Walken is?
Yeah. I know who that is.
You went full walk-in in the pronunciation. I was like, wait, what just happened?
I have a lot of discipline right now because I wanted to try to do an impersonation and I know it would not hit, and so I kept it to myself.
You did it as well as you could have.
Yeah, but I did it by accident. That's the point. Is if I tried to do it on purpose now, it would be a total flub, and I would be getting cooked in the comments. So I will refrain.
What would Josh Hart's value be? I think he would return a first from somebody. I don't know if
I need players though. Like if I'm trading Josh Hart, I want two rotation play. I also want to be clear real quick, Sam. I'm not anti this core and continuing this window with this core based on their age. These guys are all upper 20s into their lower 30s. I mean, none of them, I think Hart and Cat are either 30 or about to turn 30 this upcoming season. I'm not anti that this thing can't work. And I assume that's why you fire the coach, is you bring in a new coach and you're going to see if that coach can make it work. I'm just saying it is going to get expensive. And because of that, I think it's worth having some of these conversations in terms of, okay, can you trade this guy and open up something here, whether financially or rotationally, or fill some spots on the roster?
Yeah, like one idea that we had was, look, it feels like Dallas is going for it, right? Like, be it how smart that is or not, we can talk through that at a later date, once they draft Cooper Flagg and everything. But like, it feels like in the next 3 years, they're really trying to go for it, right? Like, is there any equity? Like, are the Knicks a better team if they would do PJ Washington and Max Christie for Mikal Bridges? Like that was one idea that we had previously, right? Yeah. Is that a deal that Dallas would accept? Honestly, like I'm not sure, to be real with that, because again, then they become exceptionally expensive. I mean, God, if I was the Adelson family and Patrick Dumont and those guys, like I'd be like, yes, we will spend. Fan base, trust me, we will spend. But I don't know if they would do that. But I think again, getting somebody like Max Christie on like that contract for $8 million a year. Those are the kind of targets that the Knicks need to find. Like I personally believe that the Knicks would be a better team if they had Max Christie and PJ Washington as opposed to Mikal Bridges. But again, you just gave up 5 firsts for a year of Mikal Bridges, PJ Washington, and Max Christie. Like, does that track for fans? Probably not. It's more that I like those two players. And if you're Dallas, you're looking at it as like, okay, we have all of these dudes in the front court. We have Anthony Davis. We have Daniel Gafford. We have Derek Lively. We have Cooper Flagg coming in when Cooper's best position is probably the 4, right? Is there a way for us to upgrade on the perimeter, like with Klay Thompson, with Cooper, in order to really make a run at this thing? Bridges is like kind of interesting to me in that regard, and you use the Washington deal to upgrade that.
Well, and if you're them, you're probably looking to the Brooklyn years, especially 22-23, or the end of 22-23 when he got traded. And, maybe some of the self-creation, like option, second option type stuff until Kyrie gets back, right? Like, because that's one thing with Dallas. You got to find somebody that can do some of that stuff from the perimeter, at least till Kyrie gets back or all of next year or whatever. And so maybe you just buy into a little bit of that with Bridges as well, where he can play a little bit more of that, just have a little more usage on the offensive end for you, and then would play perfectly off of Kyrie or would play fine off of Kyrie whenever Kyrie is back. So that one is interesting. I think this is the type of stuff that I think for New York, if you were going to make a move, you bring Max Christie in to play off of Brunson. Defensively, that makes a lot of sense. Space the floor. PJ slides into the 4, and you have OG. You can slide Josh Hart to the bench. And then now all of a sudden you have Deuce and Josh Hart and Mitchell Robinson. Like you said, if Kolek becomes a backup point guard that can play 15 minutes a night, if Hook Porty can be your third center, all of a sudden you've opened things up just a little bit.
Here's another version of this. Yeah. Like, is there like the Kings feel like they're kind of just like grasping at stuff right now? To be honest with you, I'm not totally sure what their plan is at this point. Is there a like Malik Monk and like Keon Ellis for Mikal Bridges deal? And I'm not saying that this would be smart for the Kings. I'm saying like, hey, let's call our old friend Scott Perry and see if he doesn't really know what he's doing with Sacramento kind of thing.
I mean, because Keon would be a lot of fun. I mean, that's another guy that plays off Brunson really well, defends, bring Malik off the bench in that role. I don't know what you would do with Deuce then, but sure. And to be clear, like we think if you move Josh Hart, you're not getting these level of names at all. So like, that's why that's why Bridges is the name.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're going to move somebody, and you don't have to, is the thing. Like, you are not in a position where you have to make a move, but if you feel like you need a little bit more depth, if you feel like you need to find different answers, if you feel like you can't just run it back because the Pacers are ahead of you, you're worried about the Cavs in some way, shape, or form.
If you think Orlando, maybe like Orlando has made their trade, right? And I think that roster, once the trade is made, it's made. Knicks fans know this now, right? Like, they still get crap for the first round picks for Mikal Bridges. Now it's Orlando's turn, but at the end of the day, now that roster is what it is. And that's a really interesting roster down in Orlando. So if you're in New York and that makes you a little bit nervous, then maybe my vibe is like their answer is going to be the new voice in the locker room. That's all
I think too, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of our stuff at the top here is, our biggest questions is like, are they good enough to run this back? Right. At the end of the day, like, is that the reality? Or are they a good enough team to be able to run this back? I think the answer, frankly, is yes.
I was going to say,
given how open the East is going to be next year, I don't have a problem with them running it back. But if you do run it back, it does involve extending Bridges. To me, you can't let him hit free agency next year, which means running it back does like create more long-term. I don't want to say issues, because I feel like we're shitting on Mikal Bridges. Like, Mikal Bridges is a good basketball player, but like, it does create the potential for long-term ramifications that could cause problems.
Yeah, I think that's my gut answer as well. If somebody just said like, "Hey, do you think the Knicks can win the East next year?" My blanket answer would be yes. In terms of like, can they? Am I gonna, when I'm in Vegas in a couple weeks, am I gonna put a bunch of money on it? Like, not necessarily, but can they? Absolutely. I mean, this is a very talented roster, and again, like they made it to the Eastern Conference Finals and lost to the Pacers. And they gave a game away in that series. Game one, they just completely gave away. And that is something that can haunt you, but they weren't even that far away. So if I'm them, I'm definitely talking myself into, okay, we're going to hire a coach that will get even more out of this thing offensively, right? Because that's always the conversation in terms of like maximizing them offensively. And can you maybe do some other things defensively with Cat and Brunson? But I don't blame them at all. It's just to your point, you're now locking it in for real, right? If you give Bridges the extension, all four of those guys, I guess, three more this next year plus two more, they're all locked in, and it's big money whenever you do that.
And look, at the end of the day, like, I think that they would be flexible. Well, I think they could make moves. You know what I mean? Karl Towns, I think, has value again on the market. OG Anunoby definitely has value. Like, I know that's a big contract, but he's like the kind of player that I think a lot of teams can sell themselves on being able to push them over the top, right? Like if you're making a final, Drew Holiday level move, right? Like I always think of Drew Holiday because he's been the final move for two title teams now, right? The Bucks and the Celtics traded for him and then won the title. I think Anunoby can be that kind of move for you, like a Alex Caruso style move, like with Oklahoma City if they go on to win the title, right? Like, not Siakam. Siakam's a little bit better than this, I think, but like, those are the kind of, it's the kind of value I think Anunoby brings in a playoff series more than anything because he's so versatile and flexible defensively and can take on so many different assignments. So like, it's not like you wouldn't be able to get off of the roster if you had to.
So let's go down this path for one more season. They extend Bridges, let's just say at the max number. And let's say new coach, they make some moves on the margins and they fizzle out. They actually take a step back and lose in the second round. Like, to your point, you're not in an awful situation where like you could probably still move. Like Cat is going to be somewhat, or Cat is still going to be a plus contract. OG's definitely a plus. Like you're not attaching assets to get off any of these guys on their numbers, right? Unless they just have like awful seasons individually somehow. You know what I mean? So in that way, I guess I feel like I have portrayed it like, oh my gosh, you're locking in all this money, you're in trouble. But if you can still get off each individual contract, it's not that dire of a situation, even if it doesn't work and goes south. Unless, again, one of these guys just goes, has a historically bad regression or something like that.
Or gets hurt.
Or gets hurt. True. Which, like, you can't live in those worlds with these decisions. Not on these guys, right? Other teams around the league maybe should have considered some of that, but like,
no, I mean, like Bridges plays every single game.
Every single game. Like are any of these guys what we would consider injury prone or whatever phrase somebody wanted to use? I
mean, Anunoby's had
a little history.
Bit. Yeah, but like he misses like 25 games when he misses time. You know what I mean? It's not like he's, if I remember correctly, I don't think he's like, he's missed one season. He missed like a lot of one season, if I remember correctly. But regardless, like I would say Anunoby's really the only one that has like a history.
Yeah.
But,
so especially early in it, no, that was game start. So he went through a 2-year back-to-back stretch with 43 and 48. Those were during the
played 50 his first year in New York and Toronto.
Yeah. So and then 74 this last year. So nothing crazy, but okay, a little bit. But we also
has the knee injury at Indiana as well. Remember?
True. But you just made the pitch for what a team could see him as. I guess we're just talking potential risk of going down this path. So
totally
fair.
I think he would be the only one, really. And like, if Towns was to go down in some way, like I think his value would drop like in a real way, because there would just be question at that point. But he's one where I don't think you can really live in that. Like you have to consider these things, like what is the player if he gets hurt? Like what is our risk mitigation factor here? But regardless, that's a depressing conversation to go down, and I don't think we need to do it. Yeah, I mean, just for me, it all comes down to I think I'm good running this back. I mean, look, like by the time this is up, even on Saturday, like I guess there's a chance that they have a coach, right?
Yep.
And I don't know that I really want to speculate too much on like who that's going to be right now. We kind of held this back in the hopes that they would hire somebody like relatively quickly, but they didn't. I mean, look, like I'll just say, I think Taylor Jenkins would be a better hire than Mike Brown. Like before this happens, I think that would make more sense. I think he'd be the kind of mindset that the organization could use a little bit more of. But I think he's a little bit more of a creative offensive mind. You know, he would bring like a little bit more of a consistent up tempo kind of strategy that would work a little bit more consistently with this group. But you know, look, like I'm not going to sit here and say that I know for sure. Like to me, like Mike Brown would probably be like a little bit more like just player friendly Tibbsy kind of vibe. And maybe that's what they need. Like maybe they do need that guy who's not such a disciplinarian, like hard ass in some ways and is so inflexible. But like, I've never really felt like Mike Brown's like adjustments have been the, you know, best staple of his coaching ability either. So like you go from inflexible to like not all that creative in terms of the adjustment strategy. So I'd rather take the flyer on Jenkins if I'm being honest, but we'll see what they do.
Yeah, these are the nuances of a coaching hire that are so fascinating to me. And I'm not going to pretend to know the super details of all of these coaches to have the answers. But recently on a live, we talked about how Indiana's success and Oklahoma City's success should be a blueprint for other teams in the NBA, not in terms of trying to duplicate it, but to do it in their own way in terms of organizationally down, from the top down, being on the same page. And what's interesting about a coaching change for me, for a team like the Knicks, is you have to find a coach that's going to fit this roster now, right? Like you don't have the GM and the coach and then let's go identify the players. We just talked about if you extend Mikal Bridges, you essentially have the roster locked in. So to me, I think that's one of the most important decisions. Do you think what Taylor Jenkins will do offensively and defensively, does that match your roster? Because that roster is probably not going to change as much. Or if it doesn't, is Taylor Jenkins, and I'm just using him as the example here, is he willing to adjust to his roster? And that's just the X's and O's, Sam. You know this as much as me. Every team has its own identity and personality, right? Some are loose, some are intense, some listen to music, some play games on the plane rides, you know, whatever. Is his personality going to mesh with this already somewhat locked in roster? And I think that's where New York has to be really strategic in terms of who they hire.
Yeah, agree. So just to kind of close up here, I mean, we're going to like go probably like 10 more minutes, but not, you know, we're into the final like points here. Free agency wise, Precious Achua, Campaign, DeLon Wright, Landry Shamet. We bringing any of those guys back?
I mean, maybe one of the guards. Like, if you think Kolek can play, then you definitely don't need all of them.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's the same thing with Achua, right? You bring back Precious if you don't think that Hook Porty is ready. So I think it comes down to your vibes on those two guys in terms of, are they going to be ready to give minutes or not?
The other piece for me is just what's available, right?
Yeah.
Like, who are you going to be able to get if you can use the non-taxpayer mid-level, right? Which I think that they can get creative enough to use it financially.
Can they get there?
They're far enough away to where I think they can. Like, they have basically 11 million to spend to be able to, like, you have to stay under, they have 11 million to spend for 4 guys, one of whom can be a rostered player at number 50. You know what I mean? So that's like $1 million. So you'd have 10 million for 3 guys. So that'd be the non-taxpayer and 2 minimums, basically. So I would think that they can do it. The issue is, like, the non-taxpayer name that makes sense. I mean, like, I don't really. What do you think they should be looking for in terms of depth here?
This is what's hard for me is you look at the wing room there in the starting lineup, and it's like, oh, they're set at wings. But then you look in the backup group and there are none. And so I find myself still going, I would like another wing, especially one that can play the 4 is what I would look for. Or maybe like what I would refer to as a forward, Sam. It's like a guy that can play the 4, maybe give you a little bit of time at the 3 is what I would, if we're saying with this roster right here, and assuming you have some faith in Kolek or bring one of these guys back plus Deuce, I think that's where I would go.
Yeah. I don't know that I disagree. It's just like, I don't know that guy's available for the non-tax or for the taxpayer mid-level. I keep saying non-taxpayer for some reason. Like, okay, my brain,
that's where you confuse me. I was like, are you sure they can get to the non-tax?
No, it's 5.7. The number they have is 5.7.
Yeah. Okay.
I always say non-taxpayer because like my brain, for whatever reason, like associates the word non with like, you're not allowed to use the full number or whatever. They're allowed to spend 5.7 basically is the number. The full taxpayer is like 14. Obviously, and I said they had 11 to spend. So like, I don't know why my brain continues to like associate non-taxpayer with, that like terminology, but it's taxpayer mid-level. And like, okay, so like Gary Trent was a name I thought of for them, just as like another shooter who might be able to create a little bit of offense. Right.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm looking through names and it's like, I think a lot of the names we like are they're above this, right? Like they're going to get a little bit more than this is the issue.
Yeah. Like, do you think they need more ball handling?
Okay. Sure. I could hear that out.
Like I am a Kolek guy for sure, but it's a big swing for him to just be the only guy you have, right?
Sure.
Maybe that is a minimum. Like maybe you go get, maybe one of the minimums is a ball handler, right? But these guys are just hard to find. Like it's hard to find guys that are
so like what do we think
useful on the minimum?
Is this the best Tyus Jones is going to get? What is Dante Exum going to get? What is like Monte Morris have enough?
Exum's not a bad name. I wouldn't mind Exum on a minimum for them for sure. Like one name I just thought of is like, do you try to take a flyer on like Pat Spencer?
Sure.
Like give him like a full deal as opposed to just like whatever. He's a restricted guy. So like the Warriors have the ability to retain him if they want, but he's a guy that I thought was like fairly useful in his minutes with the Warriors. It's like you're taking these upside swings where you hope that these guys can become something at some point, but you might not have it yet. Right. Or it's the guys that have been around forever. And you kind of know that they probably aren't playable in the playoffs. Right.
Yeah. I mean, so like, here's a name that I've always said, I don't think you can play him in the playoffs, but like Delano Banton, every time I watch him, like he finds a way to be productive.
I think he would be the taxpayer mid-level if you wanted him. I think he gets a little bit more than the minimum. But not like a terrible name. I don't think. An interesting name is like a bigger ball handler that I think like honestly like could play a little bit with Jalen Brunson too, potentially like let Jalen play off the ball and run off some stuff. It's not terrible.
I was looking through the names here some more. I like a lot of the names I really like, just they're going to get more than the taxpayer, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Like, does Malcolm Brogdon get the taxpayer?
That's going to be a fun market to track this year.
Like, I think he would like sort of help them. Honestly, he'd probably be the top end of the market, I would guess, if they like decide to go that route of like the vet, right?
Sure.
Amir Coffee. Like, does he work for you at all?
I like that name. I like Amir Coffee. Sure. Jay Sean Tate.
Like Jayshawn Tate. I think Jayshawn's probably on a minimum next year if you made me bet, but a good name. I think that would make sense. CAA guy too, so that would track. I actually quite like Jayshawn Tate. I would probably do that if I was them on a minimum.
What about the like power forward idea? Like do names like Trey Lyles, Larry Nance.
I mean, that's kind of why I like Jayshawn, honestly, because I think he can guard up the lineup a little bit.
Sure. Yeah.
Trey Lyles is a good name for sure. Yeah.
Larry Nance.
I think Trey is probably the taxpayer mid-level. To be honest,
he's at least going to get that, right? Don't you think? Like that's going to be the high end, or you think that's about as good as he's going to get?
I think probably right around the taxpayer mid-level feels right for Trey.
Okay. Chris,
I mean, like Gary Harris. Like, does that work for you?
Yeah, Gary Harris was a name I just saw as well. Yep.
Is Gary Harris a minimum next year? Maybe.
I feel like it. They could, if Detroit decides to go a different path, they could bring Tim Hardaway Jr. back.
Honestly, I wouldn't mind it. It's just that, I mean, do you think he gets more than the taxpayer?
I don't know. He's going to be another one because like that's a dude that started a bunch of games on a playoff team. And if there's a real path where Detroit goes a direction where he doesn't return, and then it'll be fascinating to see. I had this conversation with someone the other day. It's like, eventually the money dries up. It happens every year where Gary Trent Jr., Taurean Prince, Tyus Jones all end up on vet mins because there's nothing else out there. And then eventually take that because it's either for what they thought was going to be a contender or a specific role or whatever. I mean, that might be an advantage for New York I don't know if it's a starting spot. It could be for some of these guys, like as the fifth starter.
If somebody gets hurt here, it could very easily turn into being a starting spot.
Like, I just wonder how much that would get taken into account for some of these names we're talking about where, okay, this is a team that's really going to compete for a championship. Not only am I in the rotation, but if they decide they want to go away from Josh Hart, and let's say it's a real floor spacer shooter, maybe they put me in the starting lineup, or a real defender they want out there. Maybe they put me in the starting lineup because they want to keep this rotation off the bench. I'll go sign up for the vet men to start for the New York Knicks and make a run to the potential NBA finals. That might be an advantage they have to get somebody on the taxpayer or on a vet men.
So like, it feels like you almost want more of like a wing four than a like four. I think Larry Nance was a name I just thought of. Like, I think Larry Nance is awesome. I think the world of Larry Nance, like, again, probably a guy that you have to use your taxpayer mid-level on, I would guess. But like, does that player help you? Like, it's a different look almost to me than if you wanted to play too big. Like, I think you might actually be able to play too big with Larry Nance and Towns, and like he could help cover for Towns a little bit. I think he could play with Mitch a little bit too. There might be some small ball five lineups that you could use with Larry Nance. You obviously have to work. I mean, the other piece of this too with Mitch is like the injury stuff. Like, he's probably going to miss time is the reality. So like, you might need like a 4 or 5 who can come in and step in and like deal with some center minutes too.
That's why I like the Trey Lyles one also. Like, Trey has had to moonlight at center a little bit. I'm not saying he's your best small ball 5 option in the world. Like, I'm not going to go there, but this is the optionality that I mentioned at the top that I think would be interesting for them. And if they're not going to be able to do it, or they're not going to do it, they would be able to do it. If they're not going to do it by trading Bridges or trading Anunoby or something like that, then go find guys that can play minutes at the 4 and you can go too big, that can play 5 and you can go small, or, go find wings that can really space or provide some extra ball handling or whatever, right? Like, go win on the margins. I think that's one of my biggest takeaways throughout. This is now number 28 of our offseason previews, is winning on the margins is vital to success. And a lot of that comes with finding guys that give your roster versatility. And theoretically, Sam, you are going to get a coach that is less rigid. Like, at the end of the day, Thibodeau was going to play the guys he was going to play and the spots he was going to play them, and it wasn't going to go super deep with it. No matter who they hire is probably going to be less rigid than that. And I would want to give them a roster that was a little bit more fluid with those options.
I would agree with that. So to kind of wrap this up, I mean, number 50, like, is again, like, I guess 50 like does matter here because it's probably going to be a roster player.
Okay,
I would guess. Like, I mean, names that are trackable here. I mean,
like just the floor spacers, like you could go the Kobe Brea, Chaz Laniera.
Yeah.
You could go the defensive route, Sam, right? Like Elijah Martin.
Do you know who I'd really like is
your guy,
like Max Shulga there.
Okay. Yeah. Shulga. This is where, like, we keep saying the break is at 35 to 40. And I think we both truly believe that, but we know guys are going to go that are out. Like, it's going to happen. I'm not saying a bunch of names are going to drop to 50 that we love. There's a chance that one of these names drops to 50 that could be interesting. Or I recorded the other day over on Lakers Nation with Trevor Lane, and we talked about the potential to trade up. Who has two back-to-back at the top of the second round? Charlotte. Like, do they want to take both of those? Brooklyn has one at 36. If they take 3 first-round picks even, are they going to also take one at 36? So I don't, like, I'm not saying you use a bunch to trade up, but if you wanted to get up to 36, you might get a real interesting name there. And again, for you, that's a player that is going to be on your 15-man roster. That could be real interesting to agents and players in the second round that gives you a leg up on that. So it's at 50, I don't have a ton of faith, but they could make a move that gets somebody interesting.
A few other names. Bryce Williams is just like big and can shoot. Sure. That's an interesting name to me. If you're gonna roster somebody, like, I want to roster like an older dude. Yeah. If I'm the Knicks, honestly, like, I have Dadier as my like project, and that's probably enough for me, given that I'm contending right now. Like Bryce Williams is interesting.
You like
Kobe
John
Sanders is interesting for them.
Yeah, I like Kobe Sanders.
Tanjay,
really
I don't think Tanjay gets to 50, but like Tanjay would make sense if he was
Micah
there.
PV. Sure. You think PV will last?
PV would make a ton of sense for them. I think he could get to 50. Like I think there's a chance that a lot of these, like, I think there's a chance like Janai Broom gets to 50. You know what I mean?
Really?
Like, yeah, like, not, it's a lower chance for sure. But like, if you're looking at ranges of outcomes, right? Like, you know, there are outcomes where Janai Broom gets to 50. Sure. I think so. You know, you just kind of look at all of that and you think through it and you're like, okay, there are names here. It's an older draft year in the second round. So there are guys that we could roster that could maybe help us long-term.
You know who
short-term at least.
Vlad Golden is a guy that I'm just like very adamant is going to be a third center in the NBA. Sure. And I find that valuable. If you're really nervous about Mitchell Robinson's health or unsure if Hook Porty is completely ready, that would be an interesting name for me, because I just think Vlad is going to be able to do that. He doesn't have the upside maybe, but I think he's going to be able to come in and be the third center for a team.
That's probably a two-way. If you're doing that, like, I don't think that's
sure. That's fine. I'm fine with that.
That's the draft pick. Like, I think if you're going to do Vlad Golden, you're probably doing him on a two-way as opposed to doing him there. But again, like, I don't mind that by any stretch. Like, I think that that's a completely reasonable take. But we just named like 8 or 9 guys that I would guess that one of the 8 or 9 guys that we just named is available at number 50.
Yeah,
basically.
Yep.
Okay. Bryce, our overall takeaway here is basically run it back, which isn't like the sexiest thing in the world. Bring in the new coach, see what it looks like. I would explore the market on Bridges. I'll be interested to see if they explore the market on Bridges, I think is my take. But beyond that, that's kind of where I sit on it. Yep.
I'm with you. Again, this is a team that I know it didn't end the way fans wanted it to, but it was still, I think we've asked GMAC this, I think it was still a successful season. If you would have asked them, you know, in a vacuum, you know, you make it to game whatever, the Eastern Conference Finals, like, that's not an awful outcome for this Knicks team, this Knicks organization. And it's still a core. It's not like it's an aging core, right? It's not like these guys are in their mid 30s. So I think I agree with that. Run it back. If you want to quietly see what Bridges' market would be, I would understand. But otherwise, try to make some of those free agent on the margin moves. Hire this new coach. Hopefully that gives you an influx of energy and change and whatever, and go compete next year and then see where you're at.
Yeah. No, I agree. Bryce, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on.
Yeah, at Motor City Hoops on Twitter, on Blue Sky. If you are interested in some of the names, free agency and draft that we just spoke about, my Substack, motorcityhoops.substack.com, has some video breakdowns on like 15 draft prospects in the range of the second round, because that's where the Pistons are at, and some free agency names as well. The Pistons Pulse podcast, otherwise, right here, Game Theory podcast with Sam Vecenie. And we will be live both nights of the NBA draft. I know there's a lot of options out there, but come join us because we're a lot of fun and we'll be able to break down all of these picks.
I'm so ready for the sicko final 10 picks of the NBA draft.
Wait. It's
where like someone like Chaney Johnson from Auburn gets drafted or something. And we're just like, all right. What's going on here?
Here's what's funny. My biggest nightmare for the next week is somebody gets picked who I literally don't have notes on. And I just have to put in the private chat, this one's all you, Sam. Please don't go to me for any analysis on this pick.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'll be interested to see if that happens. I mean, I've got 100 names on the draft guide this year, when realistically, I would argue that there were 75 worth ranking.
Yeah,
maybe.
Yep.
So I hope it sticks within that 75.
Yeah. So I think I have 85 names that I have notes on all of those players. So it's going to take a deep cut. And usually you watch enough that you've at least watched a name, even if you don't have the detailed notes like we have on some guys. But
I think that's right. Okay. Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. The draft guide is out. A mock draft will be out on Monday here. We will have a ton of content coming for you guys. I promise you that over the course of the next couple of days. We will have Game 7 coverage on Sunday. We will have on Monday. What will we have? I don't know for you.
Nothing on Monday, but Tuesday we'll have off-season previews for the finals team and a live mock.
Yeah, maybe I'll make Andrew go live with me on Monday or something and run through some draft news and notes and things like that. We'll see if that's something we have to do based on what comes out. I mean, we're on like Kevin Durant watch too, so that'll be a whole thing at some point. Go to The Athletic, keep me employed. Go subscribe to the Game Theory Podcast YouTube. I'm looking. We're at 48,000 subscribers right now. We would love to get those extra 2,000 going into draft night and then just having a great time on draft night. Go hit the subscribe button. We appreciate you guys immensely. Thank you for rocking with the show. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.